and welcome to the latest edition of the Gutsy podcast. As always, thanks to everybody for tuning in, sharing your feedback. Some unbelievable feedback over the past couple of weeks, so thanks for that, and some amazing guests also. And I even took the other side of the mic recently to tell a wee bit about the story of the Catherine McCune Foundation. So if you get a chance, check that out. If you need put to sleep for a wee bit. But today, I'm really, really proud to have on the show, some people might know Seb Tucknott. Living with UC for 17 years, a massive patient advocate, the man behind IBD Relief and IBD Mate, as many other things that we will go into, and a bit of an athlete into the bargain, Seb, which I think is very impressive, to tell you the truth. So welcome to the show, Seb. It's nice to have you here, up from England.
England, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
No, it's great because I know we've been planning this for a while with your other half, the lovely Jen. We're going to pretend that they're not on the same day, but they are. Just a change of t-shirt. So, Seb, what's happening? What have you been up to? How's your couple of days in Glasgow been?
It's been very nice, thank you. We explored Glasgow a little bit. We also hired a car and went up to Loch Lomond and climbed a hill that I've now forgotten the name of. But it was
you climbed the conic, Seb. The conic
hill.
The iconic conic. So I know that you got the weather. So the views over Loch Lomond must have been pretty nice.
Really nice, and it was like Mill Pond flat.
Beautiful
loch, and it was beautiful. I would love to come back again and explore more. Yeah,
there's it's a beautiful part of the world of that. There is absolutely no doubt. A little bit different from where you come from.
Yeah, I live on the south coast.
Also very beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful places. We have the Downs, which are really nice. Not quite as mountainous as what's around here, and I'm definitely a mountain guy at heart. Come on.
I don't know if we'll call the Conic a mountain quite yet, but
no, it's not.
We can introduce.
We didn't quite have time.
We can introduce you to something a little bit meatier for your athleticism. So Seb, as I say, brilliant to have you on. I've been looking forward to this personally for a while, because I mean I've known you a while now. Mm-hmm. Good. How many years?
I think it was about 2016, maybe 2015, 2016. That was when I set up IBD Relief. So
yeah, it'd have been about that. I think I'm laughing because I think I'll share this. It was actually one of the most harrowing days of my life, and it was nothing to do with meeting you. I'm pleased to say it was a great day, but also quite harrowing. I had you introduced yourself to me at Crohn's and Colitis UK AGM. And I think it was in like the Royal College of Medicine or something in London. It was all very, very posh, certainly for a wee guy for the scheme like me. And it was actually one of the proudest days of my life, because it was the vote to be voted in on the board of Crohn's and Colitis UK, which I was very, very honoured to be. And at that point it was a formality, because I'd been co-opted for a little while, and enjoying the experience and being able to contribute and they go through the voting. And you remember us, don't you?
I remember, yeah.
You go through the voting and you always, it's like, you get imposter syndrome, I think, in certain situations. Well, I certainly do. And I absolutely had that, because the two guys that were also joining the board at the same time were like professors or something like that, you know, the two lovely girls, and who were probably the most intelligent people at that point I'd ever met in my life. And I'm going, why am I here? But anyway, it was a formality. You're bringing something to the table, and they go through the voting, and it's like, yeah, and that's voted onto the board, and then and you've got this thing where the world goes slow, and it's and then McCune, I vote against.
There was one guy, wasn't he, that put his hand up and said no.
Yeah. And I'm like, what's he going to say here? What's he going to say? Well, how have I possibly wronged this guy who I've never met in my life? And he was really passionate against me joining the board. And I had to stand up, and I was a bit emotional, truth be told, so it was quite hard. And I had to put my case forward and why I should be, and thankfully it passed eventually, and he went, oh right, yeah, okay, that's fine, and then he told me later on that he wasn't given the appropriate information, and that was why he went against it. And I said to him, could you not have done it in a less public forum? You know, there's like 1,000 people in this room, and you singled me out. I felt as if he was bullying me. But anyway, we got there, and you introduced yourself. You just started IBD Relief at the time.
I had, yeah.
And I don't want to jump too ahead, but IBD Relief, congratulations, has gone on from absolute strength to strength. So take my hat off to you.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll talk about that quite a lot.
Yeah, it's not been a hard road, but you've been so super consistent, and it's really admirable. But let's go back to the start, Seb. Living with UC for 17 years. So what age does that make you? Sorry.
So
when you were diagnosed?
I was 21. I just sort of 6 months finished university, moved back home, and I was setting up my business, which was a web design and marketing company that I'd set up at uni, but was trying to...
Is that what you did at uni?
I did chemical engineering at uni.
So nothing to do with the business you're saying?
I realised that chemical engineering... university learning wasn't for me. I'm more a hands-on person. I learn by doing, and sitting in the lecture theatre with 300-400 people. Just I can't engage that. I now self-diagnose myself with ADHD. Like I couldn't focus. I couldn't learn in that way. So that wasn't for me.
But it's not for everybody. You know, your skills clearly lie elsewhere. Yeah. And you know that I mean, we get it with our scholarship programme. You know, school's just not for everybody, and that type of traditional learning is just not for everybody. So it's great to identify something that actually works.
Yeah, I sort of discovered that while I was at university, and really fell in love with like the fun and excitement of like trying to run a business and I love solving problems. So yeah, that was kind of the route I took. But I suppose 6 months into that properly, that's when I got my first symptoms of ulcerative colitis, and I'd been what I felt a very healthy young guy, never had any other health complaints, never been in hospital, never really been to the GP, to be honest. I was doing a photography thing at some swimming competition, and I went to the toilet and there was some blood in my poo. And I was like, that's not good, but maybe it's something I've eaten or whatever. Then the next day, went for poo again. There was some more blood, and I was like, okay, this is not so good. And maybe not so typical for a bloke, but I was like, actually, I need to go and see a doctor about this, or this isn't right. So I saw my GP. He was like, I think you may have a hemorrhoid, which would explain the bleeding. So here's some cream. I took the cream, didn't actually use it because I was like, I'm not sticking my finger up my bum. And quite quickly in the days after that, the frequency I was going to the toilet was increasing. I started to get diarrhea. So I think I went, like, literally a week later, went back to the GP and was like, this is getting worse. I don't think it's a hemorrhoid. And being a bit of a science geek, I sort of research stuff, and I was like, there's no way I've got a hemorrhoid. He was like, okay, well, we need to escalate it, referred me to gastroenterology. That was like a 3-month waiting list or 6-week waiting list or something. So I was like, okay, we'll see what happens there. And then things went downhill even more. I was starting to go more and more frequently. Diarrhea was getting more and more blood, getting more and more concerned about what was going on. I then went, I think I was living with my parents at the time, so I'd just come back from uni. My mum was worried, so she rang 111. Spoke to them, they're like, go to A&E. So we went to A&E. I saw it was actually a paediatrician there that was on cool doing A&E work for some reason. And I had already researched my symptoms. I thought I had ulcerative colitis. And I said to him, I think I've got ulcerative colitis. And he said, he then didn't know what it was. He looked up on his computer, it's like Google for doctors or whatever it was. And it said on there, ulcerative colitis always presents with a fever, or that's how he interpreted it. And he's like, you don't have a fever, so you don't have ulcerative colitis. You've probably got hemorrhoid. And I was really frustrated at that point because he was like,
really?
He was like, your heart rate's normal, but it was like 85, 90. And I was like, my normal heart rate's usually sort of 55, 60. But I just fit the kind of the normal for the general population. So he's like, basically, there's nothing wrong with you. And I was like, there's definitely something wrong with me, but left frustrated, but didn't feel empowered enough to say anything at the time.
Yeah, because I mean, I think, and it's something we hear quite often. You know yourself on your own, pardon the pun, your gut, when something's not quite right, and it's massively frustrating when you know yourself. You're not being a hypochondriac, you know something's not right, and you're being dismissed, and that's, I mean, obviously this is like 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. That still happens.
Yeah, it's scary how that still happens.
It's like, so much has changed, but so much is still the same over that period. So you've left frustrated.
Yep. Left it another week. By now I was going to the toilet 30, 40 times a day and night.
Definitely not a hemorrhoid.
Definitely not a hemorrhoid. I was really getting quite weak. I was severely dehydrated. I'd lost about 10 kilos and I wasn't sort of similar size to I was now. So I went from probably 80 kilos down to 70 kilos. And this is all within like a 3-week window as well. This is very, very quick. But it went downhill.
So that's, I mean, to lose, you're a pretty thin guy. To lose 10 kilos from 80 to 70 is pretty drastic. Yeah. But for me, listening to what you said there, within a 3-week period, that's scary.
Yeah. I got to the point where I wasn't really eating anymore because I was just like, every time I'm eating, I'm running to the toilet and like, what's going on? I didn't know what was going on. So went back to A&E again. This time, I was kind of like, I'm dying here, like someone see me. The doctor there this time did a...
It sounds very pragmatic.
The doctor there this time did a rectal examination. It was the first time I've had a rectal examination in those 3 weeks. So he stuck his finger up my bum, which was a new experience for me.
An absolute joy.
And he was like, oh, I've got mucus on my glove. That means you've got inflammation or something going on. Like, you might have ulcerative colitis. I was like, that's exactly what I've been told the last guy.
Try to tell you, mate.
So they were a bit concerned. They were like, oh, okay, we need to do a scope to have a look and see what's going on. I was like, oh, okay, like, fine, at least now I'm being sort of taken seriously. When they were like, oh, we can't scope you today, so you have to stay in hospital. That was the first time I stayed in hospital, well, ever, and staying in hospital overnight. And I was in the sort of the post A&E ward, which was a pretty harrowing, scary place where there were literally people dying around me. I didn't sleep at all that night. And went for the scope the next day, and they don't. I remember saying like, what's involved? They were like, I was like, it's there. Do you put me under or whatever? And they're like, nope, just some Vaseline and knees up. I was like, okay, this is fun. And you can see when you're lying on your side, you can see, there's a TV, you can see what's going on. I could see what they were seeing, and I could see that my colon was pretty badly damaged, and I'd seen those pictures from when I'd been Googling. So I was like, okay, I've got ulcerative colitis. And I remember coming out of that procedure and just broke down in tears with a real mix of emotions of relief that I had something they could now treat or do something with, but then also fear of like, okay, wow, what is my life going to be like now?
So are you going through this yourself, or are your parents here? Or?
My parents were around. They'd come into hospital and visit. It's sort of an interesting. There was quite a few. I ended up staying in hospital for 9 days. They were, and I got told this by my parents, and my parents had spoken to the doctors, and they were really worried that my colon was in a really bad way and that I was possibly going to need surgery. So they had surgeons on standby for me because they were worried that my colon was going to perforate. And But I don't remember being told that, but then I wasn't fully with it, and I was not in a good place. So, but luckily for me, they put me on IV steroids. It managed to get things under control, and I came out in one piece. But in that period, I sort of spoke to the team on a couple of occasions. Like, again, not a huge amount of support. Considering I was there for 9 days, there's a big opportunity, I feel, there that you could talk to people. And there was two things that really stuck with me. One, the IBD nurse, lovely lady, very well intentioned, but what she said to me in an attempt to be sort of supportive, she said, I believe, or research says that or thinks that there's going to be a cure within the next 15 to 20 years. So as a 21-year-old guy, I was like, okay, well, that's happening well within my lifetime. This thing will go away at some point relatively soon. So that was one big thing, and that kind of changed how I approached my IBD initially. And then also a doctor said that some people with IBD find that avoiding fibre is helps their symptoms, and he described it that fibre is kind of a bit like sandpaper, and it would rub the ulcers and could make things worse. So again, I sort of took that on board, and that was kind of it. Was like those two nuggets of. And there was someone else said that you wouldn't be able to exercise as much anymore, which again was quite a hard hitting for someone that really did enjoy exercising, and gave me some steroids and sent me on my way after 9 days, and was in a better place. Better place, better than I was when I went in.
Those particular nuggets of information are bizarre.
They're bits that I remember. They're bits that.
But they're the bits that stand out, you know. And when you say something, that would be quite interesting to find out a bit more. You said something along the lines of those things that they said basically led you to lead how you dealt with your IBD in a certain way. So what way was that?
So when it came to managing it, for me, steroids worked very well. They got me. Well, I don't know if they put me into remission, but they certainly got me back to going to the toilet once or twice a day and form stools and not bleeding, and how I kind of wanted to be.
Yeah, what a level what you would describe as normal.
It's normal. Plus then the side effects, but it was like, I'd prefer the side effects than pooing my pants. So they also put me on mesalazine. That was meant to be sort of this thing that was on for the rest of my life and just keep me stable. But every time I tried to taper off the steroids, then I'd flare back up again. Things get worse, be back to square one. So, and that went on for about 4 or 5 years, that I was just on and off steroids, and I was steroid dependent. And that was, and I'd do that kind of behind the back of my team. I just had it on repeat prescription. I could just go and get it. I knew that they would probably want me off it. I tried a couple of other treatments, so azathioprine and 6-methoxypyrin, but they just made me feel terrible and just didn't work for me. And I knew that the only other real option I believed at the time was then surgery, which I didn't want. So I was just like, I'll just be on steroids. I don't really care about the long-term side effects because I'm still young and there's going to be a cure at some point. So I'll deal with it later. You're hanging everything on that. Yeah. Not everything, but quite a substantial amount because of that. Still a big statement, isn't it? Yeah. And then the other thing was around, we should touch on briefly now, we can go into a bit more detail about this, but the diet. So he had said this, that I should avoid fibre. I took that, and again, I'm a very literal, logical guy, probably on the spectrum. It was like, okay, that kind of, it made sense in my logical brain, the sort of vague science that I'd made up in my head, kind of, it was like, okay, this makes sense. Yeah, because when you hear someone that's of a standing, of a level of authority and knowledge say something to you, you've no reason to think it's not true. Yeah. You know, you're taking them from a standpoint of
an authority in what they're telling you, basically. And then so everything you'll create a justification for it as well. So it makes sense.
And the symptoms then made sense too. So, or what I thought at the time, and I have different views of that now, but I would eat, I don't know, some salad or a tomato or whatever. I would then see, like, your body can't digest fiber, particularly when it's moving through very quickly. So I would see then some remains of leaves or seeds or nuts or mushroom or whatever. I'd see that in the toilet after I'd just run to the toilet desperately. And so I would then see the remains of some food I'd eaten. I would then associate, go, okay, that's why I ran to the toilet, because you were trying to get rid of that mushroom or that seed or whatever. So I became pretty much phobic of fiber, pretty much any fiber, to the point where, like, even pasta sauces, I'd be like picking out herbs, and like it was a horrible place to be. But it was what I accepted as just, I've got this thing, I can't eat fiber. That's just my life now. And my diet was, which I hear lots of people and know lots of people that in that same position, that I was just eating junk food, and like breakfast was Frosties, mid-morning was a bag of Haribo, I was drinking cans of Coke, like nobody's business, just to keep me awake. Lunch was sausage and chips, and then dinner was like a plain pizza or something. But that was, and I didn't. I was craving salad and craving like things. But I was like, that's it. I can't eat that stuff anymore. That's just how I am.
So the if you don't mind me saying, the horrendous diet that you just described to me. Yeah. Was that totally different from what you would eat before you were diagnosed?
Yeah. I mean, I had, I know, a fairly typical, what would be a probably not that healthy diet, but like I'd eat it for a wide. I could eat anything basically. Yeah,
whatever normal is, kind of thing, and I always find that. And I lived with this for years, because I watched my mum as well. Her relationship with food was pretty bad, for lots of different reasons. But we speak to people so often who are on a journey with IBD, and their relationship with food is really, really challenging. And it takes, not all of them are quite got it back. I think you get into, obviously, like you actually alluded to earlier, you basically stopped eating because you knew what the effects would be.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place to be. Mm-hmm. It's a hard place to be, and then especially when you're being told not to eat certain things, and you're kind of from a nutrition perspective and a diet, you're a bit lost in what you're doing, aren't you? Because there's not even a massive, at the time, probably to a certain extent now as well, there's not a massive amount of guidance there.
There wasn't any guidance. I remember asking to see a dietitian. I got sent to just a fairly bulk standard dietitian at the hospital, and she brought out the Live Well plate. She's like, you need to have some of these and some of these. And I was like, well, I can't have all of those because I've got IBD, and you can't have fiber if you've got IBD. So I was like, this is a complete waste of time, because you have no idea what you're talking about in regards to me and IBD. So that was a bad experience as well. So food became not a pleasurable thing. I was eating purely for calories, and it wasn't a good place. And then this went on for a good sort of 4 years. My health was up and down. Toilet anxiety was probably one of my biggest symptoms, because I've got pancolitis, so when my whole colon's inflamed, it doesn't hold on to anything. And I'd be having accidents on a probably weekly basis. I got on with it, and you shouldn't have to get on with it, but it was, not like the amount of times I'd like drive somewhere, wouldn't make it to the toilet, have to go home, run upstairs, get in the shower fully clothed, because I ate quite a lot, I suppose. There was a lot came out when things went wrong.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was a properly emergency situation.
So, if you don't mind me asking, see, at the time, are you living alone? Are you living with your parents? Or?
So I met my now ex-wife just after I was diagnosed. So I was living with her probably a year after I was diagnosed.
The reason why I'm asking is from a support mechanic and where you were, because, you know, are you sharing your experience with your friends and family and what you're going through and your partner at the time? And
yeah, I think they wouldn't have been aware fully, I suppose, what I'd been through, but they were quite used to that Seb disappears off the toilet for sometimes hours at a time. Sometimes I used it as an excuse just to go and hide. But it was, going to the toilet a lot was part of my life, and dictated a lot of things I did. It made it very difficult to go on public transport. Going on a flight was bad. I remember I became a season ticket holder of Brighton of Albion, my local football team, and I hadn't really thought about it at the time, but when I first went there, I hadn't seen where my seat was, and my seat was like right in the middle of an aisle, right in the middle, and I was like, if I need to get up to go to the toilet, this is going to be really embarrassing, and I don't like making people, or I don't like being an inconvenience to people, I suppose. So if I needed a poo desperately, I would struggle to then want to go and do it. But I was okay. Got to half time, went to half time, and I was like, I'm just going to go and have a check toilet.
I get the challenges of that. I've for my sins got a season ticket. I've had a season ticket since I was a kid at Rangers, and where I sit, there's a guy kind of halfway along who drinks too much. That's his thing. So he's had a good skinful before the game, and he passes by about, I don't know, man, it feels like about 100 times during the game, and he's a pain in the arse.
yeah, and I don't want to be that inconvenience.
No, of course you don't.
And then the worst bit was going half time. I was like, I'll go to the toilet just in case. Now I've always been fortunate, and meeting Jen and her, she struggles to go to the toilet, so she also has ulcerative colitis. Even if she desperately needs to go, she still can't necessarily go because of years of trying to hold it in. So I've never had that, like, if there's a toilet, I can always get something out. But yeah, going to this football game, half time, didn't necessarily need it, but I was like, I'm just going to go anyway.
It's always a nightmare. And there was
four cubicles for 8,000 people, and the queue, and I was just like, and then that was it. Then my anxiety was like through the roof, because I was like, if I need to go, I can't go. So every time I went to football, I would wear like 3 pairs of pants, line my pants with toilet roll, take spare trousers with me every time. I never had an accident at football, but you were prepared. I was prepared, and it wasn't good.
That shows a lot of love for your team. Are you still going to games?
I don't anymore. But because I still support it. My son has my seat now.
All right, so the season ticket still exists.
Yeah.
And when you took your season ticket up, would I be right in saying the Brighton one is quite as good?
No, this was first season in the Championship.
Yeah.
So things have progressed.
Very much so. Not a bad team.
Yeah, doing very well.
Doing very well, and quite nice to watch.
Yes. Really good football, and it's been nice to sort of see them grow. They were actually a client of mine. I built their online shop website when they were like League One. They outgrew me, so I lost that one once the Premier League came along.
As is the way, you take them so far, then they think they need a bigger agency or whatever, don't they?
Yeah.
Oh, good, fair play to you. So, how did toilet anxiety is a massive thing, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Still a thing?
Not anymore. So we can kind of go down to my path of sort of getting into remission and recovery. But like now, I'm fortunate that I'm in a good place and the toilet anxiety has gone. That said, there are times, and even there was yesterday, we were for the first time in a long time, and maybe it was just ironic because I came on the podcast, but we'd been to a restaurant in Glasgow, and then we're walking back to the hotel, and I was suddenly like, ooh. And it wasn't a like,
maybe it was a restaurant.
Yeah, well, I know it was a very nice restaurant. I think maybe something else, but that was suddenly like okay, like for the last few years, I can get an urge to go for poo and I can hold it for 3 or 4 hours, normal, which I hadn't had for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
But this was it's just like, I need to go.
If don't mind me asking, which restaurant were you in?
It wasn't anything to do that. It was a very nice restaurant that we went to.
I'm just curious.
Leo Lepardo's. It was really nice. I highly recommend it. Very nice pizza. And that was nothing to do with me needing the toilet.
We'll check it out, definitely. We'll get it off you later. So, tell me this, and I know you're quite the runner, and we'll go into that a little bit later. So, during these years, were you active, or did it hold you back? Or
it held me back initially. I mean, the fatigue was quite bad.
Yeah.
Having to go to the toilet a lot was difficult. I still tried to play football. I played football during that period that before I was diagnosed or being diagnosed. I suppose that 3 weeks I was still playing football. It was the end of the season. I hadn't missed a single game, and I was determined not to miss a game. There was one game where I was like so dehydrated and I was like spaced out on the pitch, and they're like, "Seb, are you okay?" But and I'd run off at half time to go and poo, and they were like worried was I coming back, but. So I persevered with that, and I played football, and that was not, I mean, there was one game where I played football, and about 10 minutes into the game, and I was suddenly like, oh, tummy's going. Yeah. And I knew I couldn't go off the pitch, or you're just not sure that's okay thing to do. And I didn't want to be subbed off, so I just kind of squeezed my bum and got on with it, but I wasn't myself. And
a difficult thing to do during the game.
And then it got to half time, ran to the toilet, came... because I was like, boys, I need to go to the toilet. And they didn't always open the changing room, but I was like, I need to go. So I went to the toilet, came back, second half, played out my skin. They were like, you really did need the toilet. I was like, I can run now because I'm not worried it's going to fall out of me.
What position did you play, Seb? You're not playing it. You still playing?
I play a little bit now. I'd love to play more, but I just don't have the time. So I think I was playing centre back at the time. My preferred position is midfield. I'm a runner. I've always been. I love to run around. So midfield, just I'm like a dog. I just go and chase the ball all game.
Yeah. So I mean, the footballers with UC, Dan Fletcher.
Yep. Russell Martin.
Graham Shinney, Aberdeen captain.
Adam Lallana, who played for Brighton for a little while.
Yeah. Any more? That's the ones that jump. That's the ones that jump
out. I'm sure there are others around.
Yeah, I'm sure there are. Hopefully we'll get some of those guys on the podcast at some point, because I think I'm a big believer that, and not just sports people, but anybody going on this IBD journey who's, and we speak about it often on this, is they're not letting it define them. They're pushing on and being the best that they can be, and whether that's career or family or whatever it is, and it's really, really admirable. I think I've been privy to a little bit of Graham Shinney's story and Darren Fletcher's, and just hearing what they've went through, and Darren would be playing Champions League for Man U, and then having to that would be him to be down for days, and the support that I know that Graham Shinney, when especially was in Inverness, when Terry Butcher, ex-England captain, Rangers captain as well, he was really, really supportive, and I would imagine that, well, I know that Sir Alex Ferguson was super supportive of Darren Fletcher, but to see what these guys performing at such a level and what they're going through with their bodies, just superhuman almost.
It shows what your body can do.
Yeah.
And I've certainly learnt that over the years.
Yeah, it's a belief, and it's there's a degree of stubbornness and pig-headedness and everything that goes along with that's got the ability to push something so severe and something that's got such an impact to the back, to push on. So no, it's really, really, really commendable. So you were playing football, but only half of the games were good.
Yeah, so I was playing football. The big turning point for me was, so I joined a new team. They were in a slightly better league, and it Adidas brought out some football boots that you could have like a chip in it to show you how far you'd run and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I got those, and I'd always been fast. I on a football pitch, I was like, I'm the quickest player. Even if it was just in my head, that was I will beat anyone. No one can run past me. So I knew I was quick.
Nothing wrong with a bit of self-belief.
I'd done athletics when I was a kid. I've always been quick, and I've always had an engine on me. I can run forever. So I had this tracker thing, and I clocked like 15 miles or something in 15 kilometers in a game or something like crazy. I was like, well, okay, that's interesting. But the most interesting was my speed. It clocked that I'd run 34 kilometers an hour or something pretty quick. And I looked up like Premier League things, and Kyle Walker was one of the quickest players in Premier League at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm as fast as Kyle Walker. I was like, ooh, I'm quite quick here. And I didn't get picked for the team. And I was like, sod them. I want to go down the athletics track and see if I can still run. It was just after the London 2012 Olympics, and I'd watched that, and I was like, I kind of missed that racing stuff.
The London Olympics was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I sort of had memories of when I was 15 or something like that buzz you get at the beginning of a race, and just
and it had a brilliant opening ceremony.
Yeah,
which is slightly different to the Paris one.
Slightly different.
So you went back to the sprinting.
So I went down the track and was like, I fancy giving this again. I was 26 at the time or something. So like probably quite late to come or join a sport again. I remember turning up to the track and I was like, oh, I'd like to try sprinting again. I think I'm quite quick. And this guy was like, oh, can you run as fast as that guy? And I was like, yeah, probably. And he didn't really believe me. And I was like, whatever, I'll go down there, put my trainers on. And I like beat Brighton's like one of the fastest kids in Brighton. And they were like, okay, you're actually quite quick. So I joined Brighton, became like really sort of fascinated into athletics, did quite well. I was 200 and 400 was good. I'm not very good at accelerating. So 100 is not quite for me. I've got a good top speed, but my acceleration is not great. Ran at county level, ran for Sussex. And then part of me, so I'm half Finnish, my mum's Finnish. I then started to get a bit ahead of myself and thinking, okay, I'm not ever going to be GB standard. I wasn't that level. Maybe if I'd started when I was 10 or something, but I wasn't going to be that level. Whilst in Finland, I looked at their rankings and I was like, I think my times at the time, I was like in the top 5 if I was Finnish. So I was like, ooh, I could maybe run for Finland.
Professionally?
Well, athletics is never professionally, but...
I don't think it's like the 80s, but you know...
It was more just that's something I do. And there was part of me, that memory of the doctor saying you won't be able to exercise as much was kind of almost a bit of like, I want to prove a point of like, I'm now here doing this. You told me I wouldn't be able to exercise and now I'm running for Finland. That was my...
To be honest, on a total personal level, I love it when somebody tells you can't do something.
I'm that kind of guy as well.
Oh, really?
I'm going to prove you wrong, or prove myself right. So I got into athletics, had this dream of running for Finland. I never did run for Finland or even go down that route. But the thing where it's significant to my health was it then, so at the time I was still on steroids, my health was up and down. Yeah. My diet was terrible, but still performing at a reasonable level. But it was thinking if I wanted to compete for Finland in the future, I can't be on steroids because steroids are a banned substance. So it was actually that made me go, I need to change something to come off these steroids because it will stop me from it. So it wasn't anything to do with my health, it was to do with athletics. And that was, well, I changed the rest of my life, I suppose, that desire to then think I need to come off these steroids. How
did you feel? Because steroids is your go-to, because that's making you feel normal. That worked for me, It's making you feel normal. It's that. So how are you feeling? You're saying, right, I'm going to come off these to follow a dream or follow your passion, whatever way you want to put it. You must have been incredibly nervous.
Yeah, it was. I'd managed to taper off them once, and for me, my biggest trigger was stress.
Yeah,
and running a business, that's not a good thing. So I would kind of joke, and it was serious. I would flare up every payday because I wouldn't have enough money to pay everyone. That would then give me a flare up because I'd be worried about, and then something, and touch briefly on this, like I for me, like people talk about stress impacting IBD. For me, it's quite a specific type of stress. So work stress where I've got a project or something that's like busy or whatever, that I'm generally okay with that.
Yeah.
It's stress where it's something out of my control. So I'm now what is like probably more worry stress. It was like, I don't have enough money to pay my employees. What can I do about that? I can't really do anything about it, or there's things outside of my control.
Yeah.
That stress ruins me. And that was like, gives me a flare up straight away. So that was my cycle. And I was always a bit like, if only I could cut out that bit of stress, maybe I could come off the steroids, get into remission, and sort of stay there and try and manage it. So I always knew or felt that it was possible. There was just, life was maybe against me in some situation, or I wasn't prepared to make the changes I probably needed to make. So yeah, this new motivation of like, I need to come off the steroids. I was at a party to do with my brother, I can't remember exactly, but met a friend of his who was an acupuncturist, and he was like, I can help you. And he also needed a website, so I was like, I can't afford to pay you. And he was like, okay, well, let's do like a trade exchange. So I got acupuncture, he got a website.
The famous contra deal.
Yeah.
Acupuncture for a website.
My life is full of that.
Yeah.
And it...
Absolutely.
I was, like I said earlier, I was a big science geek. I didn't believe in alternative therapies or acupuncture whatsoever. I was like, he's a bit of a hippie guy. I was like, I don't believe you, Chris, but whatever, I'll give it a go. And it wasn't costing me anything because I was building a website. So gave it a go, sat down for this first appointment. And it was a really cathartic experience. It was the first time someone actually sat down with me and talked to me about what had been going on for like a good half an hour, 45 minutes of just talking to him, which I hadn't done with anyone, healthcare professionals or anything, because they just don't have the time. So that was interesting. He then explained to me that I had too much fire and damp in my body, which was what was causing my colitis.
So for anybody watching, what does that actually mean?
So it's part of like, I've sort of learned a bit more about this. So it's part of like Chinese medicine. They try and explain things through elements. Yeah. And that was their, like, yeah, it's a kind of makes sense in an abstract kind of way. But anyway, he was like, you've got too much fire and damp. I'm going to give you some acupuncture that's going to help relieve that. But there's also things in your life that you need to cut out that are damp and fire forming, which is like stress. He was like, you hold on to too much, you don't get angry, do you? Which I don't. I've never had an argument in my life, I don't think. So he's like,
that doesn't surprise me in any way, shape or form.
So you need to like have a think about how you deal with some of those things. But then the big thing was diet. So he was like, diet and fire forming things were gluten, dairy, sugar, caffeine, nightshades, which is potatoes, tomatoes, aubergines, chilies, I don't know, a whole host of stuff. And I was like, okay, still don't quite believe you because you're just some crazy hippie guy.
So basic loads of stuff in that diet you were talking about.
Yeah, lots of stuff, yeah. So I left that place and I was like...
He's just listed that in a different way.
I was like, okay, so my diet is 99% gluten, dairy and potatoes. That was pretty much, and sugar and caffeine. Yeah, it was. I was like, okay. So, but I was like, I need to give this a chance. If like, what have I got to lose to try this? I remember going to the shop straight away afterwards going like, what the hell am I going to eat because I can't have fibre. I can't have any fruits or vegetables, nut seeds. Now can't have gluten and dairy or sugar. Like, what the hell can I eat? And I think I ended up pretty much just like rice and chicken, which, again, I wouldn't ever advocate for people to do this. And we can touch more of that in a minute. But like, I tried it, did the acupuncture stuff as well. And even if it was all completely placebo, it was enough for me to believe that I could come off the steroids, and I came off the steroids, and I've never been on them since.
I find it quite interesting how you've framed that there, because you still don't quite believe it. because you still give it to me by saying even if it's just placebo.
So I my views on things have changed lots and along lots of things over the years. It opened my eyes up to like, okay, I can play a role in this. Because before it was like, I had this mindset of the doctor knows best. They're just going to give me a treatment. There's nothing else I can do. And that was kind of the story they gave as well. I was like, you take your options are the drugs, surgery, you're going to flare up every now and then. That's it. There's nothing else you can do.
I think you've touched on something that's really, really important. The mindset of someone getting into the doctors and whether it's whether they're taking a kid or whether it's themselves or whatever the case may be, that doctor does not have a magic stick. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. Sadly, it doesn't exist. You need to be part of the process, and it has to be teamwork. And the fact that your realization of that is what I would imagine really, really pivotal in your journey.
Massively. It was the time where it was like, okay, I can do something. And that just, again, opened my eyes up. It was like, okay, now I want to learn more about this. Like, what else can I do? Yeah. And that is my mindset, and that's how I work. And I know that isn't for everyone. But that was the big turning point. And that I was then like, okay, this stuff has worked. Why has it worked? Is there something in the gluten or the dairy? Is there something in like what's going on? I started to sort of go and research stuff, and anyone that has done similar will relate to that. And you can find out lots of stuff online saying that gluten does this and dairy does this, and it can trigger your immune system and do all these kind of things. Again, you always try and it's that kind of confirmation bias. You'll find some stuff that matches the truth of what you now believe. So I found lots of stuff that supported what I now had discovered. But the big problem was that when you start to sort of delve into the diet world, a lot of it is around like more whole foods and vegetables. But I was like, I can't eat those even. So that it was a real like horrible time from that. And that took, I sort of lived in that sort of space for a couple of years. And some people think that's absolutely crazy. But that was, again, it was, I didn't want to go back on the steroids. I didn't want to have surgery. I didn't know that there was other options medically at the time. And I didn't have a good relationship with my team because they'd never really listened to me. So I just kind of put up with it. I was like, yes, my diet's limited and it's horrible for my life, but it's better than putting my pants all the time. So all the other options, I wasn't there. But yeah, anyway, it was a real, learning time. But that was sort of the beginning of my journey of then really understanding more about health, how I could play a role and what I could do to support myself. So
did you then take Chris, the acupuncture guy? Mm-hmm. Do you still know Chris?
I still know Chris, yeah.
Yes. Is he still acupuncture?
He's not acupuncture anymore, but...
Oh. What does he do now?
He got into sort of tech. He actually got into sort of the web stuff that I was showing him for the website, and he ended up making like an app or something. And
all right. Yeah. Well, hello, Chris, and your app, whatever that may be. So did you were you inspired then by that experience to then go and discover a bit more for yourself, or was it a little bit
so
trial and error?
So I started to sort of try and understand stuff. It then led me to joining the Crohn's and Colitis UK Facebook group that had just been sort of set up at the time. And it was the first time then that I'd ever met anyone else with IBD.
Yeah.
Even though it was
So what year is this about?
So this was 2013.
Right. So that, I mean,
that's kind of early days of that sort of social community.
Reasonably innovative, isn't it?
And I suppose I feel like proud. I was kind of part of the original kind of community gang, and we kind of got on with each other and like support each other. And it was, again, it was a place where I'd found other people like me, which I hadn't ever experienced and hadn't experienced in my whole life, to be honest, in other areas. So it was nice to sort of feel like I was part of something. I love to help people. So people were asking questions. I was then trying to sort of help them and answer them. But it also opened my eyes up to other things that people were saying, oh, I've tried this and this has done something. Like, oh, that's interesting. I might try that as well. So it kind of, again, just started to spiral this self-discovery of things that I could potentially do that would help me. And I'd go and research them online. And I'm quite an obsessive person. Once I get into something, I really get into something. So this is a whole new world for me to get my head into. So, like, long story short, it led me to discover my health. Led me to sort of understand how I can play a role, and the way I try and make sense of it, and sort of try and use some analogies here. So, I think there's lots of things that impact your health. And lots of things that are like fairly obvious are talked about. So like sleep, stress, your diet, like the environment, like there's all kinds of things that impact our health. But where it gets complex for people, and I found for myself, is like, where do you start? What do you do? How do you try some of these things? Like, you might try something that doesn't work. Like, how do you kind of piece this together? And the way that I've sort of made sense of it in my head, and this is how I kind of, and again, this has been challenged, but how I live my life now is, I feel that there's like a sort of a balance. So I look at, you have things that you can do, or things that happen to you in your life that have a positive or a negative effect in life.
Yeah. So
you might have a late night and you've gone out and you've not slept as much, so that's going to have a negative effect. You might have had an early night and had a good sleep, that's going to have a positive effect. And I use a sort of a financial analogy here. So I kind of look at it as a bit like a bank balance. So every time you're doing something positive, that's kind of giving you some credit. Every time something negative, it's taking away you're taking away from your thing. And where I like this kind of concept is that it gives you choice. It's like, okay, I'm going to choose to gain some money by doing some right things, whatever they are, and whatever they are for that individual, and whatever they were right for me. But then I could spend a bit. So it's like, actually, I want to go out, or I want to do something. It might, I know it might negatively affect me, but I've kind of built up some credit, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, and it's the method is something that we hear quite often. Mm-hmm. Just like, almost like somebody explained it to me as like a computer game. You're banking lives. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got so many points, and you can, you know, if you get in a lash a night, mm-hmm. you're going to get hit.
Yep.
But if you've banked enough,
you can. And I see it coming back to the financial analogy. It's almost like, if you go into your overdraft, that's where you get sick. So if you've got enough buffer, then you can, and I see that now, I can push myself a bit further because I've built up that buffer. So it's about finding what works for you, and everything will work to a different level as well. So like, and even in myself, so take stress, for example. So let's say, I don't know, a big project at work is minus 100 quid for the day. In the past, whilst now I might approach stress slightly differently. So actually now it might be only minus 10 because I just look at it differently. So and I think that's where it's so complex for people, where they're trying to sort of say, oh, well, this works for me or this doesn't work for me. It works at different levels for different people, and everyone is different. But what I want to try and get across is like, if you can think of it in that kind of way, it gives you that choice of like, okay, and I'll come back to diet in a minute, but like, say you wanted to try, cutting out gluten, or someone might go, I don't want to do that. That's fine. You don't have to do that. There's no reason why you want to do that. And I'm not like, I eat gluten now. I eat anything now. My diet is completely, I now completely challenge that, and we can maybe touch on that in a minute. But like, yeah, it's your choice. You go, okay. Like for me, I was making a choice of still having my business that was probably causing me the most problems in my life with all the stress and stuff, but I wasn't prepared to give that up. So instead I was doing all these other things that was helping support me. Now I've got rid of that business and I don't need to do quite so many other good things.
But I think it totally makes sense, and using financial analogy makes sense, and it kind of puts it into layman's terms, and I think most people will be able to understand that. I think what's really important, and something I hope we get across on the Gutsy podcast, is to use your analogy. When you're in overdraft, you're not coming out of that unless you change your behaviours, and you need to listen to your body. So many people that we hear think they're going to turn the corner by just going through doing the same things.
Yeah, I think for me, again, coming back to the financial analogy, I see medications a bit like a loan. So they can help, possibly even artificially, like get you to a good place, and that's completely fine, and they're really important,
like the
steroids. So they were like my loan. Where I think the kind of medical model goes slightly wrong is we're not. If you're in debt, why you're in debt? There's no point just giving someone a loan and then they spend all that money, and then you give them another loan, and they spend all that money, and you give them another loan. We need to look at then, how do you support that person so they don't need to keep having that loan? And if they need that loan for the rest of their life, then that's completely fine. But and again, it's about finding that right balance for that individual. But I think we need to look at what is going on in your life, and do it at a time when you're in a good place. Like, there's no way that you can start making changes, and these changes take a lot of time. They're super slow. Like my sort of health journey took me years and years and years to slowly make these kind of little incremental changes. You can't do that when you're running to the toilet all the time, and they're all kind of vicious cycles as well. Like,
yeah, totally. You
run to the toilet more, you're then more stressed, you're then wasting time, you're then maybe losing sleep. Like, it all kind of like adds up. So find what works for you. It takes time, and do it when you're in a good place. So use the medications, when you're good, that's when you can start to look, okay, can I potentially make some change in my life to support me?
Fix the roof when the sun's shining.
Yeah.
So, IBD Relief.
Yeah.
When did that concept come about?
So that came about in 2015. That was driven by my experience in the Facebook group. So I could see there was people asking lots of questions, and depending on when you asked that question, you'd get very different responses depending on who's online.
Very much so.
And what was quite painful to see was sometimes that advice was amazing, sometimes that advice was not so amazing. And I will hold my hands up, I've given some bad advice over the years as well that I thought was right at the time, but I would change that view now. So everyone's trying to help, everyone's trying to do the right thing and trying to sort of share their experience.
I think I think you touched on something that's quite relevant. When someone's got to ask a question into that community, it's always like a snapshot in time. Depending who's on there, depends on the quality of that feedback, and depends on the experience as well. And I'm not just talking in the forum that you're talking, I think in general, because they can be quite negative places as well at times, and that can breed a certain culture within it as well. And so that person's, if they went on half an hour later, they might get somebody else.
Yeah.
And then it would have been a totally different thing. So it's about, and I think one thing that in the modern day and the internet, I almost don't trust internet anymore, because there's so much, there's so much challenging information there that's maybe not quite right.
There's a lot of stuff. If something gets talked about enough by enough people, then it becomes a truth. And I'm happy to be corrected on this. And if people want to share some real science on this, like I'm now not convinced, so coming back to fibre, I'm not convinced fibre does as much harm as is made out to be in the IBD community. That's my view now. And because it gets talked about so much and patients report it, and I think, so for the way I explain or rationalize it in my head now is like, if your gut is inflamed, stuff is passing through you quite quickly. Effectively, your digestive system is just a tube. It's a tube that goes from your mouth to your bum. So if you eat something that isn't digested, it comes out the other end, regardless of what's happened to it. So with fibre, I think, and this is what I sort of experienced myself, was because I would see the fibre, I'd then start to associate the fibre with my bad symptoms. It then became this kind of stress cycle. So if I ate some fibre, I would then be worried that I've eaten that fibre. That stress would then probably cause me to have some problems. Also, you have something called the gastrocolic reflex, which is when you eat something, your body wants to move things along and make some space. So you will need to go to the toilet when you eat something if you're a healthy person. With IBD, it's exactly the same, but you're a bit more sensitive. So that will make you properly run to the toilet rather than maybe at the right time. So I feel like fiber's kind of been wrongly blamed for stuff. And there are stuff I think that maybe fibre does play a role, but like it's not as bad as I think is made out to be. And that's become this kind of truth that then the doctors even say, it's like, well, my patients have also reported that I find fibre bad. So it just becomes, but I'm still yet to see some real like proper science to say that like blanketly everyone should avoid fibre, because I don't believe that anymore. And I can eat anything. I eat all fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, whatever, and it has no negative impact on me now, which I would never have believed 10, 12 years ago. I would have said you're insane.
I've been called it many times. I think, again, it comes down to the individuals. Now, I know that like Costas Jeremicidis at Glasgow University is doing some brilliant work in the CD treat diet and the eye pens and stuff like that, and fibre's a big part of that, and they do have a lot of good science behind that. But again, you know, not that I am in any way, shape or form have the understanding of where that's actually at the moment, but it comes down to the individual a lot of the time as well. You know, what your experience is, and it's great to know that you're in a great place and your management sounds fantastic just now. Everybody's different.
Everyone's different, but I think what I want to try and get across it's our minds, or certainly in my experience, my mind plays such a big role in this disease. So if I believe something or think something, then that might become true. So particularly something like diet, it's quite emotionally driven. It's quite so I think it becomes easy to sort of pin blame on stuff that might not, because you want like when everything's out of control, you want to find answers, you want to try and fix. So, and I'm just, my concern is just as a community, as an IBD community, the sort of our quality of life around food is far poorer than it possibly should be, and diet plays a role in different places, but it's really complex, and I think.
In my understanding, and the advice that I've heard throughout diet from any consultant is eat what you want.
Yeah.
Eat what you want till you find something that you can't eat. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You know that I mean that's me massively oversimplifying it. But there's nothing that's strongly evidential to say
there isn't.
Don't do that.
Yeah. But I think if you're starting to cut out 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or whole food groups, then that's where I think you need to be having that honest conversation with your team to say, like, maybe my treatment's not right or something. Definitely. Like if you're having to, like I was at times, like if your only options is rice and chicken, that is not a good place to be, and you shouldn't have to do that. And I can, like, I've been there. I've not believed that there was any other options, but there has to be. Is
no, definitely. Hope. And is that part of the reason why you launched IBD Relief, to give that resource for the community to support?
So IBD Relief was sort of, in the beginning, two things. It was coming from like a web marketing background, the web or the digital resources for patients at the time was pretty poor. It was like, could I use my skills to help create something? Initially it was like, could you create a sort of Facebook style where people can like ask a question and there's answers, but then they're there. You could search other people's questions and you could rate them. That was kind of my original kind of thought. It was also is it a space where people could share their own experiences around things that aren't just medical? So like, how can we support each other around learning anything? Like, the more I'd learn, the better my quality of life would become. Even just things like where to find a toilet when you're out and about in Glasgow or whatever. Like, there's little tips and tricks that people have that if you know that stuff, there's so many things where you're like, oh, I wish I knew that before, or I wish I knew that 10 years ago. So it was, intention was like, could it become sort of a place where people kind of share their experiences and share their stories? But it took me down a rabbit hole of all kinds of different things, and I love getting involved in stuff. So
which is very it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole. But 10 years on, it's quite a different animal. Yeah,
so it's been quite a journey. It's been a hard journey. It's like, I genuinely just want to help other people with IBD and do whatever I can to do that. And I felt my skills were best placed in like, how could I potentially go and, like, I'm not so great on social media. I'm not probably so great at talking to patients necessarily. So it was like, can I go and talk to pharmaceutical companies and try and understand what they're doing? Can I go and talk to doctors and try and like I said, I love to solve problems. So it's like, going, even just in hospital, it was like, why are they doing that? That just doesn't make sense. And I love sort of efficiency and process. It was like, why are they doing it like that? Doesn't quite make sense. And like, has anyone ever challenged this? And I want to sort of ask questions. So it took me in lots of routes, and I've been really fortunate to work with so many different people in the IBD sort of space, in pharma, healthcare, research, whatever, and just trying to sort of help support them, help figure out, solve problems, try and improve service, try and, I don't know, do whatever I can to make a difference. So that's kind of where it's been, and now working on a few projects, particularly in that space.
Okay, well, first of all, congratulations. and tell me, where does IBD Mate fit into this jigsaw?
So IBD Mate was something, IBD Relief started as a website, so IBDrelief.com. But I quite quickly realized that was a space where you had to know what you were looking for. You had to do that Google search, and we came up high on Google, and we'd have lots of traffic, but it was still reliant on people knowing what they needed to know. And what I'd experienced in my own journey was, there's lots of things you don't know that you probably do need to know. So I always felt, when I was in hospital, what an opportunity that would have been. 9 days in hospital where I was kind of twiddling my thumbs and have no idea what I can do. Why couldn't I have learnt while I was in hospital, like, okay, you've been diagnosed with IBD, here's your drugs, but here is your, I don't know, your manual, your handbook, and not just like a leaflet. It's like, actually, this is, and I say to people now, I think you almost need a degree to live for this. Like, there's so much you can learn, and there's so much you can do to help better support yourself, whether that is in appointments or understanding your treatments or doing kind of lifestyle stuff. Like, again, there's so many different things you can learn. So IBD Mate was something I wanted to try and create this education platform that was where patients could learn more about, well, ideally anything they wanted to help support them on their journey. So that was kind of the kind of concept. Where we've got to with that is ended up meeting the team at Addenbrooke's in Cambridge, met their paediatric team. They were really supportive of the idea and the concept. So we ended up creating IBD Mate for children to begin with, and the parents. And we've been using IBD Mate there for the last 4 years as part of their standard of care. And at the moment, it is a video and education resource. So there's lots of different information about all aspects of IBD, and the way the team issue it to patients, almost like prescribe it. So you go to your appointment, they're like, okay, you've been diagnosed with Crohn's disease and you're starting treatment X. Here's your prescription to IBD Mate that is like, here's like your unique code that's going to give you the videos that you need right now, because there's so much to learn and you don't want to overwhelm yourself. So it's like, here's what you need right now. And I hope that that's going to be a good concept that we're now sort of rolling that out to other paediatric centres and now into adult care as well.
Brilliant.
So this is a way that we can kind of access the patients that need it straight away. It's not that you're discovering it yourself. It's like, okay, you've been diagnosed with this. This is what you need to know. Now you can do that learning if you want to. Again, it's about the right time.
But also it's a trustworthy resource, and it's going back to what I was saying about Google earlier on. You know, Dr. Google's a dangerous place. Mm-hmm. It's a dangerous surgery to be in, because there's so... Obviously, the right information is there if you find it, but if someone doesn't know what they're looking for, that, you know, there's so much misinformation and untrustworthy sources. So having resource that's bona fide and right and correct is a massive resource. So, congratulations on that as well. So,
thank you so much.
You're not up to much. What would be your hope for the future? Because you've through this massive personal journey, massive life experience for 17 years with your own health journey. You're in a brilliant place health wise. You know, fair to say.
Yeah, I'm in a good place, and fortunate that I've been able to discover the things that help me, which
is brilliant. What would be your hope for the future moving forward, for you personally, and for, you know, IBD in general?
For me personally, I hope I can continue to be well. I love working in the space, and I've been working full time in the IBD space for the last probably sort of 5 years, and I would love to continue doing that and trying to help as many people as I can. Like that's something that I would love to do, and I really hope. So I've recently joined a company called Motilent, who are now supporting me with what I was doing with IBDrelief, because the bit that I'd always struggled with was, how do you make this sustainable? Like, who actually pays for this? How do you how do you keep this thing alive? So really,
how do you keep putting food on the table yourself at the end of the day?
And I've made a lot of sacrifices to do what I've done and not put myself first. So recently joined Motilent, and that's hopefully going to give me some like really nice opportunities to start doing some of the things that I've really wanted to do for such a long time, but just not had the support of the platform to do that. So really looking forward to sort of seeing where that will go and what impact we can have.
That's brilliant. So I mean, that could free up so much for you and give you scope to do so much more. So that's I mean, it's quite exciting to say the least.
It really exciting, and they're doing some amazing work as well. So Motilent, they're a medtech company. They started off in imaging of the bowel, particularly in Crohn's disease. So they take MRI scans and they interpret those images and give you like quantified scores rather than just relying on someone saying it looks better or worse. It's like actually analysing it properly, doing some really fascinating stuff with ultrasound now. So can we use ultrasound potentially even at home with a little ultrasound probe that you can have and kind of scan yourself? So there's lots of really exciting things going on in that space. And there's so, I think, and I will hopefully get this to your audience, like there is so much fascinating stuff going on in the IBD world to support us. And when I look at the care that's on the ground now, it's still not hugely different to what it was 17 years ago, but there's a lot more treatments available, which is amazing. And there are some really amazing centres and people doing some amazing things, but they're so stretched. But there's some amazing stuff like coming down the line, and like my hope for the future is that, I don't know, as soon as possible, but realistically going to be 10, 15 years or whatever, that we're in a place where I think we can know what treatment to put people on at the right time, because it's still, unfortunately, pot luck. It's kind of, we're just going to give this a go and see what happens. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then we'll try the next one.
There's a lot of trial and error.
And that's a horrible place to be as a patient, because you just, and you kind of give up in the end. You're just like, I don't know. Is this going to work? And then you kind of, it's a horrible place. So to get to the point where it's like, okay, you're Seb, you've been diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. We're going to do this test, whatever that might be. This treatment is the one that's for you. Take it. and then you can be in a good place. And I really want to get people, would love to see more people, everyone ideally, that can get to the place that I've managed to, where I don't really feel like I do have ulcerative colitis still, but it's a very, very small part of my life now. And that's not the case for so many people. And I see so many people putting up with so much. So yeah, how can we support people, whatever that might be, to help them get to that place?
It sounds like a good place to be honest with you. It sounds like a good place to be. So go do some quick fire.
Okay.
3 top tips for living with IBD.
3 top tips. So number 1 would be learn everything that you can and when you want to as well. There's no pressure to that. You'll be in the right place when you want to learn those things. And the more you can understand and particularly learn from other people, I've learned so much from other patients, they can help support you and help you on that journey to find what you want to find. That would be number 1. Number 2, kind of related, to say that like you can play a role, whatever it is, that there's things that you can do that's going to help support you. And there's a whole massive range of things. And even if it's just something like being more confident to talk to your healthcare team or advocate for yourself, or if you want to make some lifestyle changes, if that's something that you feel you want to explore, like that there's so many different things you can do. And I suppose kind of related to that is like, don't just put up with, I think as kind of British people, and particularly I think in the IBD community, and I've seen this a lot, we kind of just put up with stuff. It's like, oh, okay, that's how it is. I shouldn't make up a fuss. Like, if you are not living the life that you want to live, go and ask some questions. Go and like, you can ask for more, or like just, you might not maybe get there, but like you can certainly challenge and ask for more, and get to a place where you just, don't put up with just putting up with the rubbish that you're having to put up with.
I think it's solid advice, to be honest with you, because so many people, I think there's a level of intimidation sometimes, not they are being intimidated in any way, shape or form, it's just they feel intimidated by getting into that arena, and a little bit powerless. And see, at the end of the day, I mean, it's an overwhelming situation.
It's hard, and I think the reality is that the healthcare teams just don't have the time, unfortunately. Like, you are the only person that ultimately cares about your health, as harsh as that is, like you are. So if you don't make a fuss, someone else will be, and they'll be getting the attention that you potentially could have. So go and ask for more. And I know so many people that have been brave enough to then go, okay, I don't want to put up with this, and they've maybe switched treatment or got better treatment or whatever, and then they're like, wow, my life is, I don't have to put up with this anymore, and I wish I'd known that before. And I think really sort of look at that.
Is that 2 or 3?
Call that 3.
I think it's 2. 3 things that piss you off.
I still find it frustrating where there's still, and I understand where it's coming from, but like an overemphasis on the sort of the medical side of IBD. I think there's so much that can be said around mental health, sort of psychology, like support that's needed there. Also things that you can do, going back to sort of things you can do yourself. So things like, I remember talking to my team and saying, I think that stress is causing my flare-ups. And they were like, oh no, that's a load of rubbish. Like, that won't do any of it. And it's just like, and that is shifting, that is changing, but more appreciation that like, there are things that are going on that
there's a full package, isn't there?
Yeah. It's not just this binary, like, you're lacking steroids, so you need more steroid. That's why you're ill. It's kind of like there's a whole post there. So that sort of frustrates me. I get frustrated as to how long it takes to get the latest research into clinical practice. And I think the number that gets quoted around is like 17 years. Like 17 years is how long I've been living with IBD, which is actually quite a long time. So there's research that was published when I was first diagnosed that is now making into clinical practice. And that is just far too long.
Yeah.
And I think we can help as a community and patients to be like asking for more, asking for better, and try and sort of help push that along. I think that would be good. What else frustrates me? The one that comes to mind is sort of the lack of investment in this kind of this wraparound stuff and lots of the stuff that you guys are doing amazing things of, like, why does the Catherine McEwen Foundation have to fund some of the things like that should just be coming from the NHS or whatever, like, but you're doing some amazing work to kind of support and prove that is needed. But this peer support, psychological support, even administrative support we were talking about earlier, like there's so many things that I think lack investment that should be invested in. And if we do that, it's going to make such a big difference to the IBD community and actually make a big difference to the NHS as well, because they're doing the same stuff over and over again and it's not quite working.
Yeah, I think if there's, I mean, there's probably like yourself, there's lots of things that frustrate me, but sometimes it frustrates me where money gets spent, where it doesn't. And you go, really?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we want to work with our medical partners as much as possible. I think sometimes with the best will in the world, and you know, they're obviously passionate about making a difference as well, or they wouldn't be doing the jobs that that they do.
And it's not necessarily from the medical teams, like their hands are tied so much. And
you know, that's absolutely what I was going to say. That you know, they're not even fighting with one hand behind their back; they've got two hands behind their back so much of the time. So that's why it's important for people like us and people that, you know, they're there to support to be there, because there's I honestly don't see there, and this is just a personal opinion, I don't see it changing in a hurry. So, you know, it becomes that the stuff that we provide and the support that you give as well is much more prevalent. And I think you'll see us being signposted to more and more as time goes on. I take no joy in that, but I'm just glad that people will have an option for being there. Yeah. But Seb, thanks for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, there's loads of your story that I didn't know about, and it was really, really interesting to hear. Are you still running?
I still enjoy running. I realise that I have too much going on in my life that I probably can't train as much as I want to from a sprinting point of view. I dabbled with masters athletics.
Now you're saying briefly. You dabbled?
Briefly.
Did you not get quite an accolade?
So when I turned 35, you can then qualify for masters athletics, and it goes up in every 5 years. So M35, M40, and so forth. So I turned 35, and that was like, oh, maybe I can get back into this, because now I can run against people my age rather than 18-year-olds that are far quicker than me. And managed to run for GB. And we won silver in the 4x200 meter indoor European Championships.
Fantastic.
Which is an amazing experience and privilege to have done that. I unfortunately picked up an injury kind of at that event, really. So I didn't then train much afterwards. I haven't gone back to masters yet, but it's maybe when I turn 40, then I can.
Well, you'll be in a different bracket
I'll be
again.
in a different bracket. So every 5 years you get this renewed, like, I can.
You're just going to come out of retirement every 5 years.
But I'm enjoying parkrun at the moment. I've been doing a bit more.
Oh, brilliant.
I've never been good at running further than 400 meters. So I'm challenging myself and running a bit further, and
good
really
for you. Well, listen, I know how busy you are, and I know that as a busy guy myself, that that time exercising and being in your own headspace is really, for me, is really therapeutic. I think a lot of my a lot of ideas come in that space. And a lot of challenges resolved in that space as well. So I think, not only physically, but the mental aspect of it. And, I see it as, it's almost like, whether it's running or cycling or even swimming, it's almost like a moving meditation, and it really helps me. I think having that you time as well, away from the chaos, is really, really important.
I think we underestimate it as to how important that is.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's it definitely works for me. I think when I don't do it, I miss it.
Yeah,
so it's a good habit to be in. So what I would say is keep up the amazing work.
Thank you so much. You too as well.
It's been brilliant to see when you met me in one of the worst days of my life. I still remember it vividly. But no, it's brilliant to see how IBD Relief has grown. It's great that your lovely partner in crime, Jen, you guys are great together, and it's great that you have come to visit us today. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. It's been a privilege.
Brilliant. Thank you.